not the bombast. On the 26th of March, dynamic pricing, Baloch separatists, Gravitas cuts out the clutter. Gravitas keeps calm when others scream. Gravitas brings news to life. Weekdays, 9 p.m. IST, 3:30 p.m. GMT. Gravitas. Seeing is believing.
Ready to dive into your daily dose of news?
Bringing you what's trending in the West and all that's setting trends in the East.
And all of this served up with a side of insightful banter.
We don't just bring you the latest stories.
We bring you your talking points for the day.
And while you do that, from the busy streets of New York, I will provide you with deeper insights on the developments through the course of the day in the US.
And I will be here at the WION headquarters, getting you all the action from the universe of sport. All that you need to know about your favorite teams and players, right here.
The show that keeps you ahead of the global curve. A conversation you'd want to be a part of. A place where news becomes an engaging exchange.
We bring you stories that impact your present.
This is World DNA. Join the conversation.
Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching Gravitas with me, Molly Gambhir. Let's get started. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about Islamist radicals wreaking havoc in the United States. It's a horror story that seems to be getting worse with each passing day. We unravel the layers for you tonight and get you the bigger picture and the implications. And here's what else is lined up for you on the show tonight. What's happening in China over the virus outbreak in the country? I'm sure you found yourself asking that question. What is known so far? We break it down for you. What is the story of the Indian origin nurse who faces execution in Yemen, and where do things stand right now? We tell you all that you need to know. A man in India climbed an electric pole in anger following an argument with his mother. Anger clearly has different shades. How do you react when angry? Social media is definitely having a field day over this incident and the viral video. We tell you more. All this and much more coming up. Our top story tonight on Gravitas is about Islamist sleeper terrorists wreaking havoc in America. The two devastating New Year's Day attacks in New Orleans and Las Vegas. And a Pennsylvania man now indicted on charges of attempting to support the Hezbollah have reportedly raised concern across America because all three served in the U.S. Army. They were all in the U.S. Army at some point or the other. That is now putting the U.S. armed forces under the spotlight in a way and also leading to a lot of questions. How did these three slip through the cracks in a way, and what is being done to prevent this from happening again? The New Orleans attack on January 1 left 15 dead, 35 injured when Samsudeen Bahar Jabbar, a 42-year-old man from Texas, drove a pickup truck into a crowd of New Year revelers. He was shot dead at the scene. Authorities later discovered an ISIS flag, weapons, IEDs in his vehicle. Jabbar served in the U.S. Army as a human resource specialist, reportedly, and IT specialist from 2007 until 2015, and later served solely as an IT specialist in the Army Reserve from 2015 until July 2020. Jabbar had also served in Afghanistan from February 2009 to January 2010. Before the attack, Jabbar posted a video openly declaring his intent to kill. So, was this an isolated attack of radicalization, or does it point to a larger network? Investigators are probing every connection. But you see, the presence of an ISIS flag has raised a lot of concern about possible organizational ties. In the Las Vegas incident that took place outside the Trump Hotel, Matthew Allen, a Special Forces intelligence sergeant, drove a Tesla Cybertruck loaded with fuel canisters and fireworks to the site. The vehicle exploded, injuring 7. Just moments before the explosion, Matthew Allen took his own life from a self-inflicted gunshot wound, and reportedly, this was no impulsive act. Matthew Allen meticulously planned this attack, reportedly, renting the truck over 1,200 kilometers away and driving it to Nevada. But just like the New Orleans attacker, Matthew Allen also served in the U.S. Army. In fact, he was an active duty U.S. Special Forces soldier and had decades of military service. He was assigned to the 10th U.S. Special Forces Group in Germany and was on approved leave at the time of his death. He had completed multiple combat deployments to Afghanistan and also served in Ukraine, Tajikistan, Georgia, Congo. Matthew Allen was also a decorated soldier. He was awarded 2 Bronze Stars, a Combat Infantry Badge, and an Army Commendation Medal for valor. Investigators reportedly found his military ID, weapons, other items inside the vehicle. Matthew Allen and the New Orleans attacker shared further unsettling similarities. They reportedly served at Fort Liberty military installation in North Carolina. They both also served in Afghanistan in 2009, although there is no evidence so far that they crossed paths or worked together. Investigators are investigating their respective tenures in the Army and looking for other links. In fact, investigators have already discovered one common link between the two men. And it's a chilling detail, in fact. Both used the same rental platform for the vehicles involved in their attacks. Now again, was this a coincidence? Authorities are reportedly not so sure. Experts, meanwhile, believe that the military backgrounds of the suspects have increased the effectiveness of the attacks, as men with military experience are trained to use weapons and explosives.
this is something that is shocking because it's a suicide bombing, but less so because someone is involved from the military. There is another bit of information that's been circulating on the internet that I'll just note, but frankly maybe false or overstated, which is that the two individuals at a certain point served at the same military base. And, whether, first of all, these military bases are huge, and it's not shocking that two people in the military would at times be in, certain degrees of separation closer to each other than people outside the military. But that's at least something investigators will be looking at very closely.
Meanwhile, another case adds to the growing unease among Americans. Jack Danaher Molloy, a dual US-Irish citizen and former US Army soldier, faces charges for attempting to support Hezbollah. 24-year-old Molloy was formerly enlisted as an active duty soldier in the US Army from mid-March to late April in 2019. In a statement, in fact, the US Justice Department has said Molloy had traveled to Lebanon and Syria last year, allegedly seeking to join Hezbollah, and returned to America in late 2024, continuing to make attempts to join Hezbollah. He was arrested in Chicago last month, reportedly, and also faces charges of promoting hatred against Jews and for reportedly lying to the FBI. If convicted, Molloy faces a maximum penalty of 20 years in prison for a material support charge and for false statement charges. He faces a maximum penalty of 8 years in prison, a $250,000 fine, or both. Now, these three incidents have prompted critical questions. How is this even happening? What's going on? Why aren't the US vetting and monitoring systems catching these threats before tragedy strikes? While investigations are now underway, confidence in US security agencies reportedly has been shaken among Americans, because this is not just a US military issue after all. It's a national crisis for the US. The questions that remain: if there are more such cases, and what really lies ahead? Shifting focus for now. Our next story begins with a critical question. Why is China silent on the new virus outbreak in the country? 5 years after the Wuhan virus brought the world to a standstill, a new mystery virus outbreak has sparked concern about another epidemic emerging from China. Beijing's silence, in a way, is not helping the situation. China is reportedly witnessing a rise in respiratory illnesses, including human metapneumovirus, also known as HMPV. What is HMPV? It's a respiratory illness that can infect people of all ages. It's the most common in children, raising further public health concern. As for what the symptoms are, the symptoms reportedly include cough, fever, runny or stuffy nose, sore throat, wheezing, shortness of breath, and rash. HMPV transmits through direct contact with someone who has it, or from touching things contaminated with the virus. In other words, the virus can spread by coughing and sneezing, shaking hands, hugging or kissing, touching surfaces or objects like phones, door handles, keyboards, toys. Which brings us to the question of who is at risk from the virus. Children under the age of 5, immunocompromised populations, and the elderly. Now, these groups are more susceptible and more likely to be co-infected with other respiratory viruses. In susceptible individuals with underlying medical conditions, HMPV infection can lead to death. Based on data from an article published in Lancet Global Health in 2021, 1% of acute lower respiratory infection-related deaths in children under age 5 can be attributed to HMPV. In fact, health experts have expressed concern about the spread of the virus reportedly. China's health authorities say that the virus is spreading across the northern regions of the country. The Chinese Center for Disease Control and Prevention reportedly has confirmed that northern China is the worst affected. areas surrounding China are reportedly implementing strict monitoring measures. Hong Kong, for example, has reported very few cases. According to South African Broadcasting Corporation, SABC News, Japan's health authorities are actively monitoring the issue. It's because following a significant influenza outbreak, Japan reported thousands of cases nationwide. According to Japan Broadcasting Corporation, over 94,000 flu patients were reported in 1 week leading up to December 15, and that is across 5,000 hospitals and clinics throughout the country. The total number of cases in Japan for the current season has now reached 718,000 reportedly. As for India, it is reportedly monitoring the situation and is also in touch with international agencies. The National Center for Disease Control, NCDC, is closely monitoring respiratory infections and seasonal influenza cases. The outbreak has heightened awareness about the need for preventive measures, especially since no vaccine exists for HMPV. And this is despite the fact that the virus was first detected nearly 2 decades ago. Currently, there is no vaccine or effective medication against HMPV, and treatment is mostly focused on alleviating symptoms. And that is why health experts are urging vigilance and adherence to public health guidelines to limit the spread of the virus. The common people have been advised by the authorities to wash their hands, wear masks, other precautions. Remember, your health comes first. Authorities are monitoring the situation closely. It's always safe to exercise precaution, they say. And they also say, here's what else can be done. As per experts, wash your hands often with soap, cover your nose or mouth while sneezing or coughing, wear a mask if you're sick, and avoid being around others, avoid touching your face, eyes, nose, mouth, unless your hands are clean. Ultimately, they say it all boils down to the little habits. Our next story is about an Indian origin nurse who faces execution in Yemen. Nimisha Priya from India's Kerala has been sentenced to death for allegedly killing her business partner, a Yemeni national. The sentencing was approved by the president of Yemen last week, and her execution could be carried out within a month's time. Her life, though, could still be saved. In Yemen, families of murder victims can accept what's called blood money. It's basically a practice that could get Nimisha off the death sentence. This is reportedly done to avoid harsh punishments like death sentences and to provide monetary compensation to the victim's family in exchange for mercy and forgiveness for the accused. But the blood money system leaves the offender's fate completely in the hands of the family of the victim. There is no fixed amount to be paid by the so-called offender in exchange for mercy, and the victim's family can negotiate the amount. Nimisha's family saying that they are ready to pay the blood money to save her and are trying to negotiate with the family of the victim, Talal Mehdi, to save her life. The family, in fact, has reportedly asked the Indian government for help to initiate negotiations with Mehdi's family. In a post on the platform X, India's Ministry of External Affairs has said that the government is, quote-unquote, extending all possible help in the matter. Meanwhile, Iran has also said it will take up this issue with the Yemeni government and said that it would do whatever is possible in the matter. A senior Iranian official told Indian news agency ANI that on humanitarian grounds, Iran is, quote-unquote, willing to do whatever they can. Nimisha was arrested for alleged murder of Yemeni national in July 2017. A trial court in the country's capital sentenced her to death in 2020. And her appeal was dismissed by Yemen's Supreme Judicial Council in November 2023. Originally from Palakkad, Kerala, Nimisha moved to Yemen in 2008 to work as a nurse. and had reportedly partnered with the Yemeni national to open a clinic. Yemeni laws reportedly require foreign nationals to have a local partner for any kind of business. As per reports, their relationship soon worsened, with Mehdi allegedly abusing and torturing her, allegedly taking her passport and falsely claiming that they were married. In 2017, she was charged for murder. Nimisha said that she acted in self-defense while attempting to retrieve her passport, which Mehdi had confiscated reportedly. In the past, there have been a few cases of Indians on death row abroad receiving pardon with blood money payments. In the year 2016, 10 Indian men were sentenced to death in the UAE for the death of a Pakistani man. In 2017, a court in Sharjah cancelled their death sentence after a Dubai-based businessman paid blood money to the family of the deceased. In a similar case in 2010, 17 Indian men were sentenced to death for the murder of a Pakistani national in Sharjah. They were released and returned to India in 2013 after blood money was given. Switching focus, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said that he believes firmly that Donald Trump will bring the war in Ukraine to an end. But the immediate question is, how exactly will that happen? How will Donald Trump end the war? His envoy general, Keith Kellogg, poised to visit Kiev in the coming weeks. Our next report now taking a look at what could be Donald Trump's strategy. And will it be agreeable to Russia and, more importantly, Ukraine? Take a look.
Let's first take a look at the battleground. Ukraine is struggling to hold its ground. Russia is mounting relentless aerial assaults. Missiles, drones and bombs are inflicting daily damage. And on the ground, as the Russian forces continue to advance, Russian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again reposed faith in the incoming US president.
Trump can be decisive. I think that's the most important thing for us, that his qualities, they are there. He can be decisive in this war. He can help us stop Putin.
Donald Trump has promised to end the war in Ukraine swiftly. The man expected to do the job is Keith Kellogg, a retired lieutenant general. Nominated by President-elect Trump as his special envoy to Ukraine and Russia, Kellogg is now headed for Kyiv and other European capitals, while Trump has not revealed how exactly he plans to end the war. A study paper titled America First, Russia and Ukraine reveals Kellogg's thoughts. Kellogg blames the Ukraine escalation on Joe Biden's foreign policy, particularly efforts to integrate Ukraine into NATO. In Kellogg's view, Biden's support for Ukraine gave Russian President Vladimir Putin justification to escalate the war. Kellogg's plan, detailed in his study paper America First, Russia and Ukraine Last, outlines a three-pronged strategy. It suggests allowing Russia to retain captured Ukrainian territories, at least temporarily, halting Ukraine's NATO membership application to ease Russian security concerns. Kellogg also advocates offering limited sanctions relief to incentivize Russia to engage in peace talks. Trump's envoy wants future U.S. military aid to be contingent on Ukraine's participation in peace talks with Russia. However, the plan raises serious concerns about Ukraine's sovereignty and security guarantees. While promising a swift end to hostilities, it effectively rewards Russian aggression with territorial gains. European capitals share Kyiv's fears that without strong military deterrence, Russia will restock its troops and again attack Ukraine in the near future. Now, Russia's neighbor Kazakhstan says Moscow is militarily invincible, while Ukraine is only trying to withstand the armed conflict with the help of the West and at least not lose in it. Ukraine now faces a stark choice between continued resistance with dwindling support or accepting significant concessions for peace. Bureau Report, WION, World is One.
On to South Korea now, where it was a rather dramatic day in Seoul. The political crisis that the country has been facing took a dramatic turn, where the impeached president, Yoon Suk-yeol, defied an arrest warrant hours after a tense standoff. Investigators who were on their way to arrest the impeached leader were forced to abandon the bid. And now South Korea is facing a lot of questions. By evening, hundreds of protesters gathered near South Korea's presidential residence in protest of the suspended arrest. Our next story telling you more.
Ringleader of insurrection Yoon Suk-yeol, arrest, imprisoned. These were the chants heard in Seoul on Friday evening, where hundreds of South Koreans gathered in protest against impeached President Yoon Suk-yeol. The protesters had gathered near South Korea's presidential residence in Seoul, hours after authorities had failed to arrest the impeached leader earlier in the day. Waving flags and holding up signs, the procession was seen walking down a road near Yoon's residence. Earlier in the day, investigators from the Corruption Investigation Office for High-Ranking Officials, which is a leading joint investigation team, had abandoned an attempt to arrest South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol. The investigators had entered the presidential compound only to find themselves blocked by troops under the control of the Presidential Security Service. They said that they were blocked by more than 200 presidential guards and military troops in a tense 6-hour standoff inside Yoon's compound. The arrest warrant for Yoon is viable until January 6th. Now, the investigators said it is considering its next steps. The impeached leader is under criminal investigation for insurrection. On December 3rd, South Korean President Yoon Suk-yeol had declared martial law. The reason? He was frustrated by his policies being blocked by an opposition-dominated parliament. Yoon, in his anger, had set the stage for an unprecedented crisis. The parliament would not be intimidated. Within hours, a unanimous vote overturned the martial law decree. It was a swift and resolute rejection of Yoon's power grab. But this was just the beginning. By December 14th, Yoon faced impeachment. His grip on power began to slip, but he refused to yield. The crisis reached a boiling point on January 2nd, when investigators arrived at the presidential residence armed with a warrant to detain Yoon. But Yoon has supporters too. On Friday, supporters of the impeached leader adopted "Stop the Steal" slogans, popularized by US President-elect Donald Trump's supporters. Yoon supporters said they hoped the incoming US President would help their embattled leader.
I think President Trump would support President Yoon Suk-yeol. By weighing in that impeachment is not right. It's illegal. So I believe the impeachment will be invalid.
Trump, who is set to take office for a second term on January 21st, is set to comment on Yoon's situation. There are no clear ties between his campaign and Yoon's backers. As the situation stands right now, Yoon has refused to back down from his uncorroborated claims that some members of the National Assembly were pro-North Koreans determined to bring down the South Korean state. He has described his martial law declaration as a legitimate act of governance. He has also aired unsupported allegations of election tampering. So what happens next? it is too soon to say. There are several options available to investigators before the arrest warrant expires on 6th of January. They could attempt another arrest, seek a warrant extension, or pursue a pre-trial detention warrant. But as far as the political crisis is concerned, it's not ending anytime soon. Bureau Report, WION World is One.
Our next story is about healthcare warriors, those who battle it out day and night to protect you, to care for you, to keep you safe, to save your life. You see, healthcare is demanding, to say the least. It's emotionally draining. Doctors are on the front lines, providing care, providing support daily. Compassion, empathy are extremely vital. But you see, they are human beings as well. Constant exposure to suffering obviously takes a toll on them as well. Just imagine what they go through day in and day out on loop. The pressure to deliver perfect care impacts the emotional well-being of the medical practitioners. Let's just tell you why we are talking about this tonight. Now, a lot has been said about the problems facing UK's healthcare system. But the problem is not just confined to the availability of patients' care, but also the toll it's taking on the doctors. A recent survey revealing a stark reality. 7 in 10 general physicians in the UK are suffering from compassion fatigue. Yes, it's called compassion fatigue. And the number is extremely significant. Also makes us wonder, just a thought, how does your doctor treat you and how do you feel about that? You see, this condition, what we're talking about, compassion fatigue, is characterized by emotional exhaustion and a diminished ability to empathize. What it does basically is that it seriously affects the quality of patient care in an already overstretched healthcare system like the NHS. The survey conducted by the Medical and Dental Defence Union of Scotland covered 1,855 doctors across the UK. The poll found that 71% general physicians and 62% of medics overall experience compassion fatigue. Family doctors report feeling drained, emotionally distant, and unable to connect with their patients. The constant exposure to distressing stories leaves them numb, and the patients in turn feel the care they receive is impersonal and detached. Compassion fatigue differs from burnout. While burnout stems from prolonged stress and workload, compassion fatigue arises from the emotional strain of caring too much for too long. Too much for too long. For general physicians, basically, this means their essential capacity for empathy, that is central to providing effective patient care in a way, is compromised. The crisis does not exist in isolation. It reflects the broader collapse of the system in a way, of the NHS. Medical professionals grappling with punishing workloads, insufficient pay, and a system plagued by delays, crumbling infrastructure, outdated equipment, long waiting times for treatment, and inadequate mental health services, adding to the pressure, leaving doctors overwhelmed and patients underserved. The NHS, funded through taxation and designed to provide free care at the point of need, is failing its caregivers in a way. Doctors are not just medical professionals, they are the human heart of the system. Yet their struggles are being ignored. Raising hopes for change, the UK Prime Minister has promised a thorough overhaul of the NHS. On to a story from the UK. It has to do with Elon Musk, though, the British government, and a decade-old scandal, a scandal involving Pakistani grooming gangs in the UK. Let's just break it down for you. We are talking about the Rotherham child sexual exploitation scandal. It was a massive grooming scandal that was first uncovered in 2013. It has resurfaced now. And you have Elon Musk being talked about. What's really happening? Now, on the 1st of January, the tech billionaire opened a new front of attack against the British Prime Minister Keir Starmer. He accused Starmer of failing to bring rape gangs to justice. When he was head of the prosecution service more than a decade ago, he accused him of failing to bring to justice rape gangs when Starmer was the head of the country's prosecution service. In a series of posts on his social media platform, Musk said, and I'm quoting, "In the UK, serious crimes such as rape require the Crown Prosecution Service's approval for the police to charge suspects," quote unquote. His tweet, his post, brought attention on the Rotherham case. Now, the Conservatives have called for a national inquiry into child sexual exploitation. On Thursday, Tory leader Kemi Badenoch said that a full-blown probe was long overdue into the grooming scandals in the north of England. She said, and I'm quoting here, "Trials have taken place all over the country in recent years, but no one in authority has joined the dots." Badenoch said that 2025 must be the year that victims start to get justice. Tory frontbenchers Chris Philp and Alicia Kearns also wrote to Home Secretary Yvette Cooper demanding a national inquiry. Of course, they did not comment on why the Conservatives had not set up such a probe while they were in government. Now, what's the Labour Party's response, you ask? A Labour Party spokesperson said the party had already supported a national overarching inquiry into child abuse that reported in 2022. The party said, and I'm quoting here, "This government is working urgently to strengthen the law so that these crimes are properly reported and investigated." But Musk's comments were in response to renewed interest in the decade-old case. So what really was the UK's Rotherham scandal? Let's just tell you more. First brought into public focus by investigative journalism in the year 2012, the scandal involved the systematic abuse of at least 1,400 children, reportedly over 16 years. Victims, some young as young as 11, endured unimaginable suffering, including rape, trafficking, violent intimidation. Who were the perpetrators? Men predominantly of Pakistani heritage, reportedly. For nearly 2 decades, institutional inaction and cultural hesitation allowed this abuse to persist unchecked, despite repeated warnings. The issue first came to light in September 2012, when the Times reported on a 2010 confidential police document. The document highlighted thousands of child sexual exploitation crimes in South Yorkshire annually. Despite awareness of these crimes for decades, local authorities had failed to act. In response to mounting public pressure, Rotherham Borough Council had commissioned an independent inquiry. It was led by Professor Alexis J. The report came out in 2014. It was shocking in its scope, to say the least. For 2 decades, the plight of thousands of young girls, barely teenagers, was swept under the carpet. Many victims were groomed and manipulated into compliance. Others were reportedly silenced through threats of violence. The report also exposed the systemic failures of the Rotherham Council, the South Yorkshire Police and other agencies. All these agencies and bodies of power had ignored or minimized the issue in a way. It showed how police forces, councils, charities and politicians prioritized community relations over protecting vulnerable women from monstrous sexual violence. As the majority of perpetrators were of Pakistani heritage, officials hesitated to confront the issue directly. It contributed to years of denial and inaction. There was reluctance on the part of the authorities to act. They feared being perceived as racist. In other words, they allowed little girls to be raped rather than risk being accused of racism by highlighting their abuse. Just imagine that. The scandal sparked widespread public outrage, leading to resignations of key officials and calls for systemic reform. And now the case is back with a vengeance. This week, Elon Musk shamed the British government. He has accused the Labour government of opposing an inquiry because he says it will show that those in power were complicit in the cover-up. He has blamed Keir Starmer for failing to prosecute the perpetrators when he was Director of Public Prosecutions. What's motivated Musk to go after the British Prime Minister now is anybody's guess. But just for clarity here, Musk has repeatedly criticized the British government. Last summer itself, he had said that a civil war was inevitable in Britain. He had called the Prime Minister Tuatekir, a reference to the conspiracy theory that the far right is policed differently. Whatever Musk's motivations may be, the rejection of Pakistani grooming gangs inquiry will be awkward for the government, to say the least. To be fair, the Labour Party government has launched consultations and reviews on other policy areas over the past 6 months. It has made halving violence against women and girls as one of its core pledges. But critics are also asking, they are justified in asking, why the government is failing to launch a national inquiry into systemic child exploitation. Imagine if someone could read your mind. Sounds scary, perhaps. Will that make you feel uncomfortable, anxious? Regardless, what if we told you that there is now a mind-reading machine, one that has been invented by Chinese scientists, that can reportedly translate speech into thoughts? Sound mind-boggling, perhaps? Let's just tell you more about what has emerged. As per reports, the Chinese have come up with a new breakthrough in the field of brain-computer interface. It's also known as BCI. Basically, the BCI technology helps decipher Chinese speech in the brain. Not a mean feat, as Chinese language system is replete with hundreds of syllables, which may not easily be translatable.
In the entire Chinese language system, we have over 400 syllables and 4 tones. Speech requires a relatively large character database, demanding more from our front-end hardware and software technology. By increasing the number of channels from just a few to hundreds, we can solve this problem relatively well.
How exactly is it able to do so? The process reportedly is quite extensive. It entails a 256-channel implantable, flexible technology, one that has been fully developed by a team in Shanghai. But how does it even work? For starters, as per reports, the BCI technology has been able to achieve 2 major clinical trial milestones. So far, what are they? First, the BCI device successfully decoded the precise intended movements of one patient with a brain injury. More striking is the fact that it has managed to do so in absolutely real time. Second, it has been able to decode Chinese speech, this one also in real time. How is it able to do so, you ask? By translating brain waves into text, by basically converting brain signals into commands quickly and accurately, thus giving out the impression that the device is capable of reading one's thoughts. But how can one even operate such a device? Well, the patients who are trained with ways to use the technology can control the devices controlled by the brain just with their thoughts within 2 weeks.
Each up and down of the waves of these brain electrical signals represents a discharge of brain cells. Thousands of discharges eventually form these wave patterns. Through a series of complex big data algorithmic processing, they can form expressions of human thought characteristics.
And what has the success rate for this technology been like among patients so far? According to reports, as per a Chinese medical startup, the patients have been able to demonstrate the prowess of the BCI technology using their minds to control software, pick up objects, operate a digital avatar through speech, and even converse with an AI model. Not just that, in one such case, a patient who was diagnosed with a disease affecting his motor skills was able to play games and even control devices by using this technology just 2 days after surgery. Talk about wonders of science that allow tapping into the resources and also the abilities to the fullest. But this also poses a key question. While a breakthrough such as this always is exciting and bears a lot of promise, is this making human beings more reliant on machines? Shifting focus, the US government is considering new restrictions on Chinese drones, with China accounting for the vast majority of commercial drone sales in America. This move could impact not just companies but consumers who rely on these devices daily. The US Commerce Department has announced that it is considering new rules which could basically restrict or ban Chinese drones from the US market. The department is asking for public comments until March 4 to assess potential rules aimed at safeguarding the drone supply chain. According to the department, threats from China and Russia may allow adversaries to access or manipulate these devices, putting sensitive US data at risk. The focus is on drones using Chinese or Russian equipment, software, chips, and it's not just a small slice of the market we are talking about. China accounts for the vast majority of US drone sales. DJI, the world's largest drone manufacturer, holds over 50% of the US commercial drone market. In September, the House of Representatives voted to bar new drones from DJI from operating in the US. And the same month, Customs and Border Protection blocked imports of some DJI drones reportedly under the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. If the new restrictions are implemented, DJI and other Chinese companies could be prevented from launching new products in the US. Consumers and businesses relying on these drones for photography, farming, or logistics could face higher costs or limited options. But this issue is not just about market dominance. There is a national security angle as well. US lawmakers have repeatedly raised concern about DJI drones potentially transmitting data to Beijing or being used for surveillance purposes. In 2019, the Congress banned the Pentagon from using Chinese-made drones. DJI rejected these allegations, claiming no involvement in surveillance and stating that no forced labor is used in its manufacturing. But the company has suffered financial damage from being added to a US Defense Department list of military-linked companies, and this could be just the beginning. The Biden administration has recently signed legislation that could ban DJI and another Chinese firm from selling new models in the US. And a final decision is expected soon. For consumers, this means potential changes to the devices that they use for everything from real estate videos to farm monitoring. The US government will finalize the rules for Chinese drones by January 20th, and this follows a trend of actions against Chinese companies, including vehicle and telecom restrictions. As part of its grand strategy to restore stability in its war-torn economy and entice international investment, Syria is contemplating legalizing Bitcoin and the digitization of the Syrian pound. The Syrian Center for Economic Research, SCER, came up with this plan. It seeks to use blockchain technology and the adoption of cryptocurrencies to tackle economic instability, inflation, and financial marginalization. The Syrian economy, remember, has been decimated by years of conflict and poor management, with a 60% reduction in its GDP since 2010. This is according to the World Bank. People no longer have faith in conventional financial institutions due to the significant depreciation of the Syrian pound and the accompanying inflation. The SCER addresses this by outlining a comprehensive plan that includes digitization of the Syrian pound, using blockchain technology and the legalization of Bitcoin for financial transactions, trading, mining. This strategy hopes to stabilize the currency by using assets like gold, US dollar, and Bitcoin as support. Syria could also prioritize sustainability and anti-monopoly efforts by mining Bitcoin, utilizing its undeveloped energy resources. Cryptocurrency is already in use in Syria. Allegedly, opposition groups like Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, HTS, have utilized Bitcoin as a source of finance, and some worry that crypto might be misused. Despite the SEER strategy aiming to legitimize and control crypto usage, the plan calls for the central bank to keep a close eye on the digital assets industry to make sure everything is open, safe, and accountable. Legalizing Bitcoin has the potential to provide substantial advantages to Syria. Millions of Syrians, after all, depend on money sent from outside for their livelihood. And this would make remittances much easier. El Salvador's financial ecosystem, for that matter, benefited from the legalization of cryptos. The Syrian government could follow a similar strategy, as El Salvador's financial ecosystem, which benefited from the legalization of cryptos. News from India. Delivery services firm Blinkit rolled out a 10-minute ambulance service in the city of Gurugram on Thursday. The service is currently in the testing phase and has been launched with 5 ambulances. In a post on the social media platform X, Blinkit CEO said, I'm quoting, "We are taking our first step towards solving the problem of providing quick and reliable ambulance service in our cities. The first 5 ambulances will be on the road in Gurugram starting today. As we expand the service to more areas, you will start seeing an option to book a basic life support ambulance through the Blinkit app, quote unquote." He added, I'm quoting further, "Profit is not a goal here. We will operate the service at an affordable cost for customers and invest in really solving this critical problem for the long term," quote unquote. Within the next 2 years, the business intends to double the service's capacity, and within the same timeline, Blinkit wants to roll out the services to every major city in India. Whether Blinkit will form partnerships with healthcare facilities to offer the service and the specifics of the business model remain unclear as of now. Currently, the ambulances come with basic medical setup. The Blinkit CEO saying that ambulances would be fitted with critical life-saving setup, including oxygen cylinders, stretchers, monitors, and necessary emergency medication and injections. The start of the new year came with a gift from the sun. A spectacular light show. The northern lights danced across the skies, reaching farther south than usual. While the sight was stunning, it comes with a warning. Solar storms can have serious consequences. Take a look.
It all began when the sun unleashed 3 powerful solar flares. These flares are intense bursts of energy that can disrupt radiation systems and even power grids. Adding to the mix, a giant coronal hole opened in the sun's atmosphere, sending fast-moving solar winds directly toward Earth. When these charged particles from the sun collide with Earth's magnetic field, they create geomagnetic storms, stunning auroras lighting up the skies. As the solar winds enter our atmosphere, they interact with oxygen and nitrogen atoms, producing vibrant colors. Green comes from oxygen, while nitrogen adds shades of purple, pink, and red. This time, the lights traveled farther than usual, gracing skies over Mongolia, France, and even the UK. But as we marvel at this natural wonder, it's essential to understand the risks. Solar storms can disrupt satellites, affect GPS systems, and even overload power grids. With the sun entering its solar maximum, the most active phase of its 11-year cycle, These storms are becoming more frequent and intense. The more powerful the storm, the greater the potential for disruptions on Earth. For now, we enjoy the show. But as solar activity increases, we must prepare for the challenges ahead. The sun's beauty hides its power, and we need to stay alert. Bureau Report WION World is one.
Let me now ask you a question. How often do you fight with your mother or your father or a sibling over something? How do you register your protest? Or what do you do after that argument? If things don't go your way, do you bang the door, storm out of the house perhaps, talk it out, or give them the silent treatment? Or maybe just